Welcome back to the science and art of open water swimming. Today's guest is someone I've known for about 15 years, Adam Knight. Our eldest boys went to primary school together, and while we didn't train much together, we did team up and win the all-important parent versus student 4x50 freestyle relay, a proud sporting achievement that still stands in our memories. This year, though, Adam prepared for something far more serious, a solo Rottnest Channel swim. After many years of team and duo crossings, he committed to stepping up and taking on the 20-kilometre challenge himself. And when the official event was cancelled, he didn't hesitate. He organised an out-of-event tandem crossing with his son Patrick, determined to make the journey to Whadjuk anyway. If you've been listening to the podcast, you've unknowingly been part of Adam's preparation too. I'd often get messages or phone calls after episodes, questions, ideas, clarifications, all part of him trying to understand the craft of open water swimming as deeply as possible. Professionally, Adam is a Qantas pilot, navigating time zones, irregular sleep, and a schedule that's quite unpredictable. That's made his swim preparation a fascinating case study in consistency under chaos. Outside the cockpit and the ocean, he's a low handicap golfer, a life member and former president of the NBBC, a grassroots group dedicated to the men's mental health through casual catch-ups and conversation, and importantly, an awesome karaoke singer. Adam, welcome to the podcast.
So I'd really like to start with your day job. So you're a Qantas pilot. I guess for a lot of people it sounds quite glamorous, but I know it's fairly far from the routine of most people's job. So can you give us a sense of what your job actually involves?
All right. It does sound glamorous, but at the end of the day, it's just a job. And like everyone else, if I had a choice, I'd rather go and jump in the ocean and maybe not swim to Rottnest, but jump in the ocean and have a swim. I've been doing it for a while, and I suppose, it's something I enjoy doing. I suppose enabled us to, in a way, we've just ended up in Perth because of it, and in some strange way ended up in this position to attempt the swim yesterday.
For you, what does a typical roster look like, maybe from a weekly basis or a monthly basis?
So my job is a little bit, I do training now, only because I've been around for so long. And so probably every second week I'd go to either Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane, and I'm on the 737. They have simulators over there, and my job is to instruct or check other people in the simulator. And then every other week, I would just fly out of Perth. And the nice part about my job is I get to choose the flights I do. And so a day's flying for me could be to Sydney and back, or it could be to Kalgoorlie and back. So I tend to choose to go to Kalgoorlie, the shorter flights and get home early, which is nice.
Yeah. But even with every second week or thereabouts where you're traveling interstate, how does that affect your sleep and your body's rhythm, and then potentially how does that impact your ability to train?
That's a good question. Look, I try and have tried different things, I suppose, over the years. But probably the easiest thing is just keeping your body clock on the time zone where you live, so Perth. So when I go to Brisbane, it's okay. It's only 2 hours. And because I'm a domestic pilot, I don't have the massive time changes that the international pilots do. So I find Brisbane's all right, but I find Sydney, Melbourne is quite difficult to... I'm forever missing breakfast, for example, because, as in like at the hotel, because it always shuts off at 10:30. And so I never, it's 7:30, and they sort of look at you funny going, well, why are you so late? It's like, well, but the converse to that is it's funny because when other crews see the Perth crew arrive at a hotel, they generally scatter because they don't want to be out to all hours of the night just having a quiet beer after work.
Yeah. And how, from a training perspective, then you have a little bit more predictability when you're home, but when you're away, you've obviously got to find different locations to train, and a lot of that, I guess, is on your own.
Yeah, and that was probably the challenge with how to do Rottnest solo, and I really ummed and ahed about doing it or how I was going to do it. And I did a duo about 9 years ago, and I was able to, there's plenty of pools, but I just didn't really have a program. And Paul out of Swim Smooth in Claremont came up with not that I know him, but I saw a 20-week solo schedule, and I just looked at that and went, well, that and it was he's sort of targeted for, I know it's my phone listening to me or whatever it was, but to people like me, I suppose, or people that couldn't get down to his squad. So I looked at it and went, in a week you go, righto, you need to do 5 swims and you can put them wherever you want. So that worked perfectly for me. So either say if I was flying early in the morning to Kalgoorlie or wherever, I could get back and then go and smash out a swim in the afternoon. Or if I was, say, in Melbourne or Sydney and had an early or a late simulator session, I could just go and jump in the pool in the morning and do whatever the session was and juggle them around. And sometimes, actually, probably the hardest one was when Larissa, my wife, wanted to do the Cape to Cape walk, which was awesome. But it meant that I missed about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 days, and I stacked a couple of swims on each day in the before and after, and that was a bit hard on the shoulders.
We all have lives. We're not professional athletes as much as we'd like to be.
Yep.
And trying to balance what you're trying to achieve from a swimming perspective, along with how we engage our family in that journey. When you were in Perth, did you get the opportunity to swim with a squad?
Yes, but only, I suppose I was always I never quite thought I was really good enough to swim in a squad. Like you, I was from the country, and I was a really good swimmer at a place called Mildura. Like, I was a good swimmer in a small town. But then when I went to actually competing against people from Melbourne, I discovered that I wasn't as good as what I thought I was. Still all right, but not, there were people a lot better. And I suppose I just never really thought I was that good. And I just thought squads were for more elite people, more elite than me. And it was actually my son. And I'd see Kindwin's squad down. We swim a lot at Bold Park. And again, I'd think, oh, no, it's too, well, not too full on, but just not me. And I was quite happy to be a bit of a one-man band, go down and make myself relatively accountable. But, well, I did. And I found with the program that we're on with Swim Smooth, it's done with a lot of it's done with the tempo trainer. And so that's like having a coach in your ear, which was great. Having said that, though, when the swim got cancelled, the Rottnest swim this year, Paul said, come down and do a session. And I did find the squad session that I did with him. I jumped in, and it turns out that, there are way better swimmers than me in the squad, but also there's a range. And so I actually fitted in, and they were really, they were great. And I get it. And I did probably train a little harder than what I would have on my own.
So you grew up doing a fair bit of swimming, and I imagine a few other different sports. When did you decide that, I'm actually enjoying this swimming, and the idea of then swimming in open water?
Well, growing up in Mildura, we started swimming because my brother used to get asthma. And then we used to holiday down on the Great Ocean Road at Christmas time, again for a holiday, but again to help his asthma out a bit. And I got to, surfing and really, not really open water swimming, just really enjoying being in the ocean. And it wasn't until we actually came to Perth where I had never heard about the Rottnest swim. I like going to the beach and like the waves and stuff. And it wasn't until a mutual friend of ours, Mark Cotter, was doing a duo, and he said to me one night over a beer, do you mind, would you like to paddle for me? And I stupidly said, well, not really, but if you can't get anyone else. And that was, that was enough. And so anyway, I paddled for him in his duo, and he was, did a great job. But I was just taken by, probably like a lot of other people say on your podcast, just the vibe and the positivity of the event. It was almost like intoxicating, I suppose, just that natural buzz. And I was like, wow, this is something I really want to get into. And so I think at school, when the kids were in school, as I think you mentioned in the intro, the relay teams, I'd done a couple of those thinking, oh yeah, I've still got it. I got it over 50 metres, just. So I thought, right, next year I'll enter or I'll get into a team, and there was no teams available. So I just entered my own team, and we're all brand new.
And so over the time, you've done a few teams, you've done some duos. At what point then did you say it's time to do a solo?
Good question. I nearly did a solo back around COVID because I thought, yep, it's time, because I'd done teams, I'd done a duo, and then I was like, right, got to do it. And I did get into training, and then because of COVID and because I was going to the East Coast and back, I had to start isolating, and that curtailed training a bit. But then I was isolating. My parents have a little shack up in Moore River. I was isolating there and spending a fair bit of time, and I thought, well, there's not that many people around, and maybe, I don't know, I'll get arrested now for saying all this, but I got myself a wetsuit. It was winter, it was terrible weather, and I thought, well, Rottnest is not much fun. I used to swim in the river up there by myself. Didn't infect anyone, and I thought, right, I'll get stuck in it. But then it just got harder and harder trying to keep to a schedule with, being isolated, and in the end it was just a bit unworkable. So I thought, right, no. And then sort of put it on ice. But I suppose because our kids have been involved, like your kids watching you do all your stuff, there's all these photos of our first swims, and the kids are small, and as my son, well, they're all good swimmers, and Lucy jumps on board at one point and come into one of our teams and helped us out, and was our best swimmer, and with all the old timers, and then Patrick, who is younger again, was crewing for Lucy and being involved, and never an amazing swimmer, but he's got a lot of sort of endurance in him, in everything that he does, really. And we were going to do a family swim in 2024, and we're on holidays, and unfortunately Patrick come off a rope swing and broke his leg really badly, and so that year it was going to be Patrick, Lucy, myself, and Larissa, but we're still going to go ahead with it. Now that all got too hard, and then the 2024 swim got cancelled. We went back and did it in 25. We got to the end of it, and Patrick straight away wasn't enough swimming for me. I want to do the solo next year. And I was like, geez. Thinking, if he does that, I don't want to, because I've always had a thought about doing it. I thought, well, he's going to do a lot of training now if he really is going to do it. And as you know, with your kids, it's all about building the memories, and not just your kids, but people. And I thought that would be a great opportunity to do it together, and I couldn't let him do it without me doing it. so that was it, really.
So with that, it's really interesting how you bring in, or how important that family component is. Even though you don't necessarily have a squad, you've still got this other environment which helps you or encourages to train. Moving from that duo, even though it was a fair while earlier than doing the solo, what was different about the preparation?
Well, I suppose I thought I took my duo preparation pretty seriously, because my partner was a better swimmer than me, and I didn't want to let him down. So I got what I thought was pretty fit, and it was good. Like I swam well on the day, as good as what I thought I would do, and it was great. But this time I thought, well, you can't, not that you can hide in a duo really, or a team, but you can't hide in a solo. And I just thought, I want to leave, and that's why I've been, what's the expression? First time caller, long time listener to your podcast. Like, just trying to soak up all the information out there, and I just wanted to be as prepared as possible. I knew that you had to start a long way out, and I'd been swimming from the previous team. I knew it was a big step up, but I just thought, right, if I'm going to do it, I don't want to muck around. I want to do everything correctly, a bit like what they want me to do at work, and make it as safe as it can be.
Yep.
I just treated the solo, along the same lines. I thought, right, I won't try and not leave any stone unturned, and prepare as well as I can.
It's interesting again how you bring that similarities between work and executing the swim, the importance of making sure that everything's organised. When you mentioned the podcast, though, because you are, as I said to you before, one of our most enthusiastic listeners, I'm really interested to know, really curious about what are the ideas that probably helped you the most.
Oh, every podcast is really good, I got to say. And even out there in the channel yesterday, I was, the whole mindset thing, being kind, trying to remember the expression that was used, but positive affirmations or talking to yourself, saying that it's good rather than everything's bad, was really helpful. I think it was Flick, when she was at 13Ks and got pulled out. When I got to 13Ks, I'm like, well, here I am. I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I tell you, a lot better conditions than what she had, that's for sure. Even the latest one with the recovery, we'd just been across to the rec lab but made sure we got a good meal last night. Didn't actually sleep that well, but tried to get a good sleep. And just in the optimizer, that was fantastic. I spent a lot of time looking at that. I just found it's probably like, I suppose, anything, I suppose like my job at work, because I'm experienced and people come to me to get information, and I just didn't feel that I was experienced enough as a solo swimmer. Certainly as a team, I was okay. But I was just trying to soak up as much as I could. And I've just found your podcast fantastic just to listen. And just all the information was stuff you wouldn't probably normally pick up, and because everyone's from all different backgrounds, and in the original one, hearing Tyson's story was great, and just it's all been very inspiring.
Touching on Tyson there, and part of his story was the swim being cancelled halfway across. So you were signed up with Patrick to do a solo this year, and the event was cancelled. So what went through your mind at that point in time when you knew the race wasn't going to happen on the weekend?
Well, actually, first of all, I think I thought of Tyson. I just thought, you poor bugger, like he wouldn't know this, but he was actually a very famous person in our house for a while, because Patrick saw him at the fish and chip shop where Patrick was working, and Tyson's come in and he mentioned, because Patrick goes, geez, Tyson looks really big shoulders, he looks fantastic. And he's swimming a Rottnest solo, and I was like, wow, it's amazing. And so probably as I do, maybe like you said in the introduction, I get enthusiastic, and I must have mentioned Tyson a lot, because everyone in my family was like, oh, Tyson Landers, sort of thing. But I was just very impressed that someone so young, even thought to do it. Whereas here's me, an old timer, just thinking, oh, I suppose just overthinking it really. We went down to City Beach, got the team down there, because I had a team, Patrick had a team, 2 different boats, because I didn't want to hold him up going across, or him hold me up, which was more unlikely, I thought. Yeah, it was disappointing, because Paul's program had 5 months of swims, and I did every single session, did not miss one. And the one session I missed was the actual race. It was selfish, I suppose, thinking about that, but we're standing there, and I had a couple of my paddler and one of my other crew members are actually colleagues at work who are very, they're safe at work, and they had boats, and that's why I had them on the team to just, for the safety aspect, and to tell me in these situations that it probably isn't that safe. And we were standing at Clean City Beach having a cup of coffee, and they're sort of both looking at me with that look of, trying to say gently, you probably shouldn't do it. And eventually called it off. And like Patrick's boat was a little bit smaller, and it was probably going to be all a bit rough. But just disappointment. But that was where this next session, the next opportunity came from, because my paddler said, well, what about doing out of event crossing? And I was like, well, I've heard of it, but I thought that was for proper swimmers, like people that could do squads, or Kindwin and all those type of people. And he goes, oh no, well, I've got a boat, it's all set up, and so we had that conversation.
So that conversation was had on race day, or the day before the race then?
Yeah, and so I went from feeling disappointed to just like, right. I got home, called Patrick, or wherever. Patrick was with me, and said, right, well, let's do it. So we got home, jumped on the website, and just straight away looked at what date we could do. And and that's it.
Well, just over 24 hours since you actually finished the swim. So can you just talk us through how yesterday went?
Yeah, it was a great day, but I have to add in that I was so enthusiastic about entering that we'd signed up and paid for it, and then going, yeah, it's really good. And Larissa, my wife, and everyone was really excited. And then we went, oh, hang on, it was my youngest daughter, Juliet's 16th birthday on the 11th, but she was having a party on the 14th that night. And I was like, oh, that's not real good. And we'd also got some tickets to the soccer as well. And it was just all that went out the window when I saw we could do it. So, well, and that did happen in the end, but I tried to say to Juliet, I wouldn't mind staying at Rottnest. And she goes, oh, no, can you come back? So that capped off a very long day, but we got back and we were able to get the 16th birthday party done. But how yesterday went, it was great. Like I was definitely nervous going in, but getting to the beach and seeing you and Tyson and Mark Cotter and Sharon Gleason, another friend of mine, down there, just supporting it was a little bit, as I think I said, a bit surprising. Well, I felt a bit surprised you were there because I was just so focused on getting there. And it was just, I remember when I would see other people doing solos, I was so excited for them. And it was actually me, the other way around. So, and then our boat didn't turn up, and I was thinking, well, that's a bit. And that happened to us last year too. Like I got out to the 1.5K, and our boat wasn't there, so I'm like, oh, here we go again. And that was just a minor mishap. But
Where was your boat?
It was on its way from Hillary, and Kindwin was standing there going, oh yeah, it's 4 minutes or 5 minutes to go. I was thinking, geez, I'm not sure what to do here. So I went over to Addie, who's one of the Rottnest Channel swim people, and said, you just don't have our boat. And he goes, oh, that's okay. And then I walked over to Carmen just to say, well, congratulations, because she's a legend. And she's like, yep, 2 minutes. And I went, yeah, congratulations, Carmen. Oh, we're just, our boat's not here. And she's like, that's okay. Yeah. It'll catch up. And when she said that, I was like, oh, I felt so relieved. And then just, shook everyone's hand as you saw, and then away we went.
Look, you are a very calm person, and you wouldn't necessarily see the nerves that might have been going through you underneath, because we were there on the beach and we saw, yep, your boat wasn't there, but I couldn't see any concern in you at the time. What were the conditions like yesterday compared to potentially what it could have been on race day?
Mate, it was like going into Bold Park. It was beautiful, perfect. Yeah, we could not have had better conditions. Well, having said that, it was really nice off the beach, but you always get out when it gets choppy and you go, well, it's supposed to be perfect, but it's still hard. So yeah, no, it was probably poles apart, that's for sure.
It's still a long swim, regardless of how quick you are, and there will be some ups and downs through the day. Any times through the day where you sort of questioned yourself or you felt really good?
Yeah, because I suppose I had a little bit of doubt all the time that could I really do it? And even through all the training, I'd be like, could I really do it? And I'd go and do a red mist session, which is one of Paul's things, and they're hard. And I'd be like, oh, and I'd do it. And like the 10K swim, which we did with Tyson, which was great. And Whadjuk, can I really do it? And I could do it. But I'd never, there was always that lingering. So, but when we jumped in, it was really nice weather. I'd had an issue because one of my shoulders was starting to get a bit tight. And after the Rottnest swim didn't happen, Patrick and I went and did a squad session, which was awesome. And the next day, Patrick, because I suppose because of my job, I love following the routine.
Yep.
And I was following the routine, and Patrick could always go, no, let's do this, let's do that. And he goes, let's go and do 100 hundreds, Dad. And I was thinking, nah. But then I went, yeah, sure, why not? And we got down there and we did it, and I got out and it was great. I've been pushed by him. But then after that, my shoulder started to get a bit sore, and I was thinking, oh, that's no good. And anyway, I went and got some physio on that in the lead up to the race, and that really helped. And then when we took off the beach, that was my biggest concern. How will my shoulder hold up? And it was feeling really good. And then we got about 700 metres into it, and I started cramping in my calf, which, I cramped a little bit in the lead up in the training, but not much. And I'd taken all electrolytes, and I'd been trying to follow everything correctly. And I was really, and I think I went out a bit hard. I'd been saying to Patrick, don't go too fast at the start because he's a faster swimmer than me. And I was leading him out, and I think I was just excited, got the cramp. and then end up having to have one of those like pickle juice things just to settle me down. And I think there was a bit of an, like, once that the cramp sort of came and went a little bit, but then went away. And then we were told just before the start of the race that because it's an out of event, there'd be a ship potentially coming through. And so a ship came through. We had to tread water at, we got about an hour and a half in, and we were treading water for, I think, 25 minutes, which I thought would have been good, but it actually sort of derailed us a little bit. Like, looking at even my heart rate today, it was coming up really nicely, and then it went way down, and then it took a long, long time to come back, and then Patrick got cold because he's really lean. So that was something that sort of caught us by surprise, and then he took off flat out after that, and I had to have some words with him to slow him down, but then after that we settled into a really nice rhythm.
Some of the challenges of the out-of-event crossing is that the shipping channel's open and you have to obviously give way to those larger vessels.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've, again, taken it in your stride and reassessed before progressing. You got the opportunity to do this. We'd spoken earlier about whether or not you were going to do this solo as a tandem before you entered, and then decided not to. And then the opportunity did come up to do this out of event with him as a tandem. What was it like doing it with Patrick?
Amazing. Probably, probably one of the best days of my life, really. Marriage, 4 kids, and then Rottnest solo. Yeah, well, go back to making the memories. Like, Patrick bought my old man's ute, and it's in Mildura, and so me and the old man drove it over a couple of years ago. And that trip was, such a memorable time. Not air conditioned, broke down 3 nights in the hotel in Norseman, and it was so many fun things to remember. And then sharing all the training with Patrick and all the other rest of the family, to the point where now the rest of the family were doing the Port to Pub this week because they all got so into it, which is unreal as well. So, yeah, it was certainly well up there in the top. I always like to say top 10 things. It was right up in the top 10.
Was there a moment that stood out as a highlight for yesterday?
There were moments that stood out, I suppose, for different reasons. That the ship was sort of, caught me off guard because here we are. Previous year, I treaded water because of waiting for our boat, but now I'm treading water watching a very big boat go past. And our skipper was unreal. He said, "Oh, look, let's head. The current's going. Let's use this time and head south," and which was a really good idea. And shout out to Brett Costain and the crew, Jai and Jess. They were fantastic, and Larissa, of course. But yeah, that was memorable. And then I suppose Patrick had blown me up a couple of times in the water in the training, and when he took off, I'm thinking I was going, and I can keep with him, but until I can't. And so it was memorable when I sort of had some words, and I'm like, "Mate, you got to slow down. Like, I'll make it, but I can't make it at your pace." And then he was fantastic. He did, and he sort of felt almost a bit like me with my old man. He took me and took me over, and I suppose what epitomised that was right at the end, the very last bit, because we swam into the natural jetty. You're on the beach, which we didn't know what the beach was like, and of course, being newbies, we've just pulled up, and Carmen and her boat, they were in front of us, but just up a little bit further to the north. Obviously she's done it so many times, and where we pulled up, we swam into the beach. I'm swimming. It's like you're looking up, going, it's there, it's not there. So I was just putting my head down, doing 100 strokes to look again, and another 100, and eventually got there. And right at the end, I'm walking in, going beautiful, and there's this ledge, which would have been about, 4 feet high of rock. And Patrick was standing up on top of it because he beat me, of course, looking down at me. And I just looked at him and went, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. So I thought, I don't have the energy to jump on top of this. So I just did like a seal. I just jumped up on like a seal and sort of tried to roll over backwards. And I knew I'd be getting videoed, and it's probably the funniest thing of the whole day. It's hilarious. I just looked all of my 51 years, that's for sure. And then we stood there, we got the photo, and Patrick had wanted to get champagne, like to celebrate. And I was like, mate, yeah, typical old bloke. I'm like, no, that's rubbish. And then I went and bought $5 bottles of champagne, and we sprayed each other on the beach. And it stung. It would taste like rubbish, but it was, looking at the video of that now, it's so fun.
If you were to reflect on the preparation and obviously the day itself, if there was a next time, what would you change or what would you do differently?
I'd probably do a few more squads, actually. Like when I'm here in Perth, I'd probably I don't like early mornings, even though my job involves a lot. And that was another. I remember saying to Patrick one time when he wasn't training so much, I'm like, mate, be better than your best excuse. And I think I've got to take my own advice on that. If I was to do it again, I'd probably, because that did help just push that a little bit harder. But outside of that, I think the nutrition I found a little bit harder as well in the ocean. I thought I was going to be fine, but I think I could do it differently. But I was probably trying, when Patrick was going a little quicker, I'd be pulling up and he'd be chugging the stuff down and I'd be just panting. And so maybe I didn't really want to do the tandem, as I was saying before, to put pressure on either of us. And then when I finally realised that I just had to slow down and go, right, do this at my pace. And next year, if he wants to go really, really fast, and he can. So I would just focus like I did of doing a solo by myself. But it was, having said that was so special doing it with him.
Did anything end up being easier than you expected?
That's a good question. Probably I was able to swim the whole way without, I got tired, but I remember seeing Carmen at the pool one day, and she said something about, I'm like, Carmen, it's amazing how you've done so much. And she just tapped her head and goes, it's all up here. And when I was out there and I knew she was in the water not that far away, I thought, well, I could see a boat, and I'm getting tired. I mean, she's probably not getting as tired because she's probably fitter. But I just thought, there's no, another friend of ours, Dave Hughes, who'd done it. I think we talked about him putting himself in he'd be good at putting himself in the pain locker because he was an elite sportsman in rugby. And I remember thinking a couple of times, oh yeah, I'm in the pain locker, but I'm like, I'm not in any pain at all. And my shoulders were fine. And so I just got tired. So I found that bit I could swim the whole way. I just got tired, that was all.
Just a couple of quick ones.
Yep.
Your favourite swim set, or the one that maybe you didn't enjoy but you knew was really important?
Favourite swim set was probably two of them. I love all the open water stuff was unreal. And I loved the swim at the start of the week because it was always really easy, all the technique stuff. And a little bit of tempo timer was good.
Was there a session in training when you thought, yep, I'm ready for this?
Yeah, 10K with Tyson, I reckon. Well, the one before we did 10K at Mullaloo, and I was like, whoa, that was hard. And having you out there as well, actually giving me gels, feeding properly, doing it properly, and then having the two boys out there, we got to the end of that, and I didn't feel too tired. I was tired, but I was like, right, yep, I can definitely do it now.
And I'm interested to know, post-event last night, what was the first karaoke song you sung?
Didn't sing any karaoke last night, but I did see the question about songs. The song that came to me very first up was actually a Slim Dusty song, not last night, but in the water when the sun came up. And he sings a song, I think it's called Foggy Mirrors. And the start of it is daylight breaks, I check both mirrors, and I won't give you the whole song. But I just sang that to myself a couple of times and then a few others. But well, Juliet had her 16th last night, so there was a lot of ABBA sung here, which was fun.
So finally, congratulations to you and Patrick on a successful crossing to Rottnest. It is an amazing achievement. Before we go, is there anything else you wanted to add or anybody you'd like to thank?
Yeah, I suppose in summary, because we've crossed a whole lot of different topics, and when I just come back to thinking about my supporters, my number one supporter being Larissa, I'd just like to thank her for being my biggest supporter, just putting up with me and my obsessive compulsiveness when it came to planning and training, which I can be a bit over the top with, and just believing in me when sometimes I wasn't probably believing in myself. And even at the end, when we needed a first aid person on the boat, we didn't have one. She went and did a 2-day course just so we could have that, which was awesome. On the boat, when Patrick started to get cold and I didn't realise I was getting cold, she just jumped in, switched up our feed rotations and made sure that we didn't have any issues with hypothermia and stuff like that. I want to say thanks to Patrick for actually having the guts to say out loud, let's do the solo, Dad, and stop, thinking about it. Just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off. So good on you, mate. Drag the old timer out and across, which was unreal. I want to say thanks to the girls, Isabel, Lucy and Juliet, also for believing in me and being encouraging to both Patrick and I. And then coming down and training with us, which was unreal. And then that's evolved to doing the port to pub. We're doing that this weekend. Being at the start of the race, putting sunscreen, vest, wool fat, all that stuff on us and laughing along with us, and then being at the end just celebrating it was unreal to do that with them. Costain was unreal, just helpful with advice because he'd done 2 solos himself and multiple paddle crossings, so he was amazing and also just very calm on the day. I mentioned Jai and Jess, the paddlers, they were really solid all day as well. And one of our paddlers that didn't make it was Nick Stevens, who normally paddles for us, but he's had an injury. I reckon he's probably like me, just getting a bit old. But he still was involved. He drove us down to the start, and then he was there at the end to have a beer with us and celebrate us on the beach, which was fantastic. And the other 2 that we saw out in the water was Jason, Josh Leong, and also Big Dino and Joel. They came out and visited us on the water, but Dino, of course, visited and had a beer at the end. So I probably have forgotten someone, but they were all the main people. And thanks to everyone for getting excited for us. It was great.
It's a team effort. It might be a solo swim, but there are plenty of people behind the scenes that allow us to enjoy those open water swims.
Yeah, good on you, mate.
Thank you so much for your time and sharing your reflections on the last 12 months or 15 years. It's been really cool to chat.
Well, thanks. And can I just one last shout out? Lily Landers. Really do like the waves in the podcast. It really sets it off.
Awesome.
I love listening to all of them, and I'm not sure what it's going to be like listening to myself, but I hope someone can get something out of it. Good on you, mate.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Science and Art of Open Water Swimming. A huge thank you again to Adam for sharing not just the story of his crossing with Patrick, but the honesty, lessons, and the perspective that makes journeys like this so meaningful. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please follow the show, leave a rating or review, or share the episode with someone who might be dreaming about their own big swim. It really helps the podcast reach more people in the open water community. Thanks again for joining me, and as always, I'll see you in the water.